Good day, good night. CFR Network, CFR News, CFR Sports. As you already know, diligently working hard in the lab. Trust everybody is well. We made it through the zombie apocalypse part one. We're here for part two. And I've got a special guest with me, Jeffrey Wilson. Welcome to the broadcast. If you can give a brief introduction to yourself, sir.
Well, yeah, returning guest here. I appreciate you having me on once again. I am Jeffrey Wilson from That Podcast Network, and there you can find a variety of our shows. The Conspiracy Farm, it's me speaking to you, Everything Combat. We are growing the network. We have several shows we're going to be signing up here very soon. Just out here in good old the sticks of Iowa, looking at the Scott County Park, checking out all this snow that just fell after it was 70 degrees a couple days ago, and just looking forward to chopping it up with you, my friend.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And it's an honor again. It's always wonderful speaking to yourself. Wealth of experience and wealth of knowledge in so many different areas. So it's always good chopping it up with, as you say, with like minds. Giving something interesting for the listeners to partake on their journeys or whilst they're washing up, cooking, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Let's give it to
So
him.
I tell you where we should start. I think we should start with some good news in regards to yourself. Like what's going on with you since the last time we've spoken, sir?
Well, like anything in life, like we talked about a little bit off air, is a balance, man. Some things are going great, some things are going not so great, but I think that is just kind of the plight of life. We all have to balance the things that are going good and going not so good. But over the last year, it's been really crazy. Obviously, the normal jobs that I do were kind of taken away due to
Yes.
COVID, and I already had other stakes in the fire, but it was very, very urgent that I definitely keep those stakes going and burning brightly. Whether it was the podcast, whether it was the acting, whether it was the voiceover. But in any of that, you just never know kind of where that next check's going to come. So you got to definitely keep grinding, keep the stakes in the fire. But yeah, 2021 is starting off pretty sweet, man. We ended 2020. I commentate and I co-own a company. It's called Everything Combat LLC, as well as it being a podcast where we work with a company called Caged Aggression, where we air their fights on pay-per-view. It's been awesome, been an awesome ride. I commentate the fights with UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich, UFC legend and future Hall of Famer Lil Evil Jens Pulver.
Yes,
Both of
indeed.
them, both of them, the very first champions in their weight division.
Hmm.
So we had three back-to-back events, September, October, November of last year, and we just were killing it. And this here at the end of March 25th, 26th, 27th is going to be the first ever in the sport of MMA, a three-night MMA pay-per-view event right here in my hometown of Davenport, Iowa at the River Center. If you guys have any interest or aren't doing anything that weekend, cagedaggression.tv, jam-packed stat card, LFA veterans, Bellator veterans, UFC veterans. So, like I said, just try to have as many stakes in the
Hmm.
fire as possible, my friend. And I'm a grandpa now.
Whoa, congratulations, congratulations.
I appreciate that.
Boy or a girl?
It is a boy, young Emmett. He's amazing.
Excellent. In these tumultuous times, obviously babies are still being born. Let's not forget that.
Well, and I told my daughter, I'm seeing almost every other day on my Facebook timeline or my social network, people posting pictures of their newborn babies. It's almost like the baby boomers at World War II. It's like now we're going to be calling these COVID babies because
Yeah.
everybody got locked in and got a little friendly with each other, which is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, and it does show, and as you've highlighted, that's exactly what they're being called, COVID babies. People have been
Yeah.
locked together. For some, it's been very terrible, but for
Yeah.
others, it's been and like an awakening, a reconnection to your spiritual other.
Yes.
And what we're here to do is to procreate and bring forth light and
Well, and it
life,
almost
even.
illustrates what I was saying in the beginning. You know what I mean? Like you're exactly right, man. Emergency room visits of kids being abused, domestic violence, drunkenness, overdoses,
Mm,
people beating their babies. So there is a yin and there's a yang, like anything in life. And so there's always that balance. So it is beautiful to see people who took that time and did something productive. But again, you can't have the one side without the other. So I mean, it's again, it's very crazy times we are in, man.
most definitely. And I did notice I have been obviously I do keep a diligent eye on the old social media and stuff. Those three events that you did last year, those were wrestling events, right?
MMA,
They were
MMA.
MMA for some strange reason. I had wrestling in my head. Is it the
I don't, well,
commentate?
probably because of our last conversation. I'm a huge wrestling head. So I've called some wrestling too, but no, these events, Cage Aggression MMA, it is straight amateur and pro mixed martial arts. Like I said, veterans from LFA, UFC, Bellator. Like, I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. These kids are there to scrap.
Give it their all. This that is it. Okay, so give us a little bit of a taste of those events. Was it a
Well, I
mixture
mean,
of was it a mixture of amateur and pro on across all
yeah,
of
it
these three?
was. It was. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, these guys, I mean, the amateurs, obviously they're amateurs, so they haven't had the chance to fight in like your LFA, your Bellator, your UFCs. But these guys who have come to the UFC, come to Cage Aggression from those promotions,
Hmm.
or have gone on to those promotions from Cage Aggression, these guys are guys and girls. I mean, we have people fighting, Eileen Villalobos. Several people have come from Jackson Winklejohn, which is a huge
Ah,
gym here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where John Jones fights out of, Holly Holm fights out
yeah.
of. Both Holly, former champion, John Jones, obviously, well, former lightweight champion, but he gave it up to fight heavyweight. So, I mean, these kids are coming in super, super talented, super hungry, ready to fight. It is such a huge, it has grown. Mike Goodwin and Cage Aggression have grown this over 10 years, and not necessarily to pat ourselves on the back because we're all kind of a family helping each other, but with
Hmm.
our addition of like Pat Miletich, Jens Pulver, the pay-per-view platform that we developed, it's helped take the whole thing to a next level. Mike Goodwin, the CEO, he's having to turn down fighters in the hundreds now who are willing to
Wow.
pay their own way to come fight on this platform, because not only is it one of the largest growing platform or promotions in the Midwest. Again, you got two UFC legends calling your fights. It's being seen all over on pay-per-view. So it's definitely a platform and a place where people are definitely clamoring to come to fight on.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And it's good that we've got a plethora of other promotions and organizations that people can cut their teeth on. Um, Most people just think, the quote unquote casuals, oh, UFC, and they think
Yeah,
and they associate that with absolutely everything rather than, that's just a promotion, sir. There were a plethora of other major promotions. Um, what's the presence like on YouTube for Caged Aggression? Is there much highlights? Like what's is the subscribership growing on that?
absolutely. We have Case Aggression MMA on YouTube. We have full events, the full 3 hour events, but lately we've been chopping them up into individual fights.
Hmm.
So, if you were to fight on there, it could be like you don't have to just tease through the whole card. You could specifically find where your fight was. And again, the matchups have been incredible, and the knockouts have been. I think our October event, it was a spinning heel kick to this gentleman by the name of Michael Ship. He's a game fighter, so he has nothing to be unhappy about except for catching that L that night. But it was such an incredible knockout. Jens Pulver was sitting next to me. He's like, "Oh shit!" So that made national news. That made Business Insider, Apple News, and then another one of our last fights, uh, Brendan Jenkins and Jordan the henchman Hinman, who will be joining us in the broadcast booth this time. Jordan suffered, he was winning the fight, but out of nowhere, Brandon spun off this spinning elbow, which literally everyone in the crowd just knew it was bad. Even Pat Miletich stood up immediately and was like, "That's bad, that's bad." it,
Mm,
it, it made Jordan's face, as he said, into cornflakes. So he wound up getting like 60 screws in his face.
whoa.
And so his future in the MMA ranks is in doubt, but he's a veteran of the Cage Aggression Cage, and he's going to be joining us on the broadcasting team Saturday night. Pat's going to be joining me Friday. I'm sorry, Thursday. Pat's going to be joining me. Jen's Thursday, and then Jordan's going to be calling the fights with me on Saturday. I'll be doing all 3 nights. I'm the workhorse out here, but
Definitely, definitely.
it's
So I
going to be
take it,
awesome.
but based upon previous fighters, injuries, etc., and just the psychology of, these warriors and athletes who go out to do these combat sports, is he thinking currently of staying in, returning to fighting, or is he looking at transitioning into presenting?
I think the latter. I mean, he's I think 35, 36 years old. He's had a very illustrious career. He's fought, I believe, in LFA and other the bigger promotions too. It was really, really a catastrophic injury, and he didn't lose consciousness, but his face, it really cracked his face up pretty bad. So the nature of MMA obviously is being hit and
Hmm.
being hit in the face. And he does have 60 screws in there and titanium and this and that. But he just had a new baby girl a couple weeks ago. And we had a very interesting discussion. If you go to Cage Aggression MMA or Everything Combat, you could see the episode where we talked to the CEO, Mike Goodwin, talked to Jordan about his injuries, his medical costs, etc. And Jens Pulver actually broke down the fight with him and Brandon, and tell him what was going right, what was going wrong. And again, Brandon just spun that elbow out of nowhere. But he's definitely reconsidering his path, and he's called cage aggression fights before, and he's a very very smart, articulate, well spoken guy, and he's been in the sport for a very long time. So he definitely, as a color commentator, knows what he's talking about, knows what to look for as he's calling fights, without a doubt.
Excellent. I mean, it's similar of sorts. I mean, I don't know how damaged Mr. Sage, Super Sage Northcutt, who lost
Very
his,
similar, very
yeah.
very big injury, very very big frontal face injury, and yeah, there was a lot of question about whether he should return as well, because that was, even though that did not look like it was a huge shot, but the
Mm,
damage that was done with that one single shot was devastating to Sage.
most definitely. But he's making his return, I think, in for the
Quite
TNT.
possibly,
Yes.
he's had some time, but again, it's just one of those, you just, like Bruce Lee called it, the art of fighting without fighting. The whole point is to hit and not get hit. And,
Hmm.
we've seen plenty of incredible defensive counterpunching people who very rarely get hit. But
Yes.
there's always that, almost Sage didn't see that coming. My boy Jordan Hinman didn't see that spinning elbow coming. Michael Shipp didn't see that spinning heel kick coming. So, I mean, there's, again, the competition is very much so on some next level stuff. So these guys have to be on point every time they step into that cage.
And that's the wonders and the thing about combat sports, especially mixed martial arts, is that anything can happen. You can have a
Yeah.
500 to 1, or however these odds are, favorites. And all it
Yeah.
takes is a stick submission, or a spinning heel kick, a elbow,
I
and
mean,
that's it.
I always like it to like Buster Douglas, who completely shocked the world, in the late '80s, knocking out Mike Tyson. Like, there was
Tyson.
absolutely no shot of him winning, and he went in there and freaking knocked him out after getting up from almost being knocked out. So yeah, it's one of those, like NFL. It's an any given, this particular night. It's usually Saturday, but it's an any given night type sport where anything
Mm.
can happen.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I'd be remiss if I don't talking about injuries and stuff. And now you've mentioned boxing. We lost a veteran. Was it yesterday or the day before? Was it?
A few days ago, Marvin Hagler, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. A shining light when boxing was great. The golden era of boxing. For some, they may have a different era, but for me, the 80s and
Yeah.
90s,
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
just the time, and the fights that he had, the classic fights that he had was just out of this
Well, and
world.
everyone started posting, and the legendary fight of him and
And
Hearns and Hagler, Tommy the Hitman Hearns, those three
yes.
rounds, it was just so iconic. I mean, that embodied that spirit, like you said, in the '80s. You had Hearns, you had Hagler, you had Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray
Ooh.
Leonard. I mean, that's just one weight class. I mean, the '80s
Mm.
of boxing. That's really when I started really enjoying combat sports as a kid, watching boxing on like Wild World of Sports with Howard Cosell, and yeah, the '80s. I mean, I know it's there's still some very talented fighters out there, but I know the ranks were there was so much depth in each weight class.
Definitely, definitely. And I don't, well, maybe because we were too young maybe to be privy to it, but it didn't seem like there was too much boxing politics. It was a case of this person, is good, that person's good, they've beat so many people, let's put them together and fight kind of thing. There was
Yeah.
always pretty much big fights going on.
Well, and you can't talk about '80s boxing without Don King. So there's always some measure of politics in the mix if you start talking about Don King. But the matchups were pretty on point. There wasn't too much of the jumping of the ranks where people completely undeserved would get a title shot or whatever. Because I mean, back in the day, I mean, people, and even kind of now with the UFC, people demand certain fights, and it's all about putting ass in the seats and sell those pay-per-views. You can't be putting Glass Joe in there with
Yes.
Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury. No one wants to see that. So they go for what the fans want to see most times.
Well, yeah, most times with a big, big exclamation mark on either side. I mean, you've highlighted it perfectly. It's now. I mean, it was sports entertainment before, but it's even more leaning towards. I would even flip those two around and say entertainment sports, especially when we talk about modern day boxing and UFC. It's
Yeah, without a doubt, and that's why, as an old school professional wrestling fan, I love that aspect of it. My partner, my homeboy,
Huh?
my broadcast partner, like Pat Miletich, he
Huh?
hated that stuff. He always, don't be gloating
Potatoes?
in the ring, just get in the ring and fight. And it was always like, but that's, and then Conor McGregor comes along and I kind of gate called it, the Conor McGregor effect, or even like a Chael Sonnen. He loses to Anderson Silva and then talks his way into a light heavyweight fight with John Jones, which, he still lost, but it started illustrating you can talk your way into big fights. And I kind of like that aspect of the professional wrestling kind of aspect of it,
Yeah.
not at the expense of the rankings, like we were talking about. You know what I mean? Chael
Hmm.
Sonnen in no way, shape, or form deserved that light heavyweight fight. I don't think he even fought in light heavy. His previous fight was in middleweight against Anderson Silva, but he talked his way into a situation where the fans wanted to see that. And Dana White, intelligent as he is as a matchmaker, was like, you know what? People want to see this. Let's
Let's,
sell it out. And I'm
yeah.
sure they did.
Yeah, well, most definitely, and he's the king, the foundation of smack talking, quote unquote, and the promos within mixed martial arts.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's why he did, fighting Mayweather. Are you kidding me? But he did it. He parlayed it. And that's without, and that's the sad part about it. Success leaves clues. And I've seen other fighters, and I won't mention any names, try to replicate that effect, but it's not organic. That is organic to Conor McGregor, talking
Yeah.
smack and going in and backing it up. So you have people who, like, most fighters, like, oh my God, this dude's making heavy dollars. Granted, he's putting his money where his mouth is, but his mouth is running and upping his dollars. So you had a lot of fighters trying to replicate that in a very inorganic, not natural fashion, and people saw right through it. Everyone started calling for super fights. I'm the best of the world, and I need a super fight, et cetera, et cetera. And it just didn't play because it was more manufactured than organic.
Definitely, and the McGregor effect had, and I'll emphasize, had its time when he burst
Yes.
onto the scene and he was calling the rounds when he was gonna, do the thing. He was
Mystic Mac, baby,
Mystic
Mystic
Mac.
Mac.
Exactly. He was in the minds, excuse me, he was in the minds of the fighter. They were pretty much defeated by, before they even entered the cage or the octagon.
Exactly. And that a perfect example is Jose Aldo.
Oh
Jose Aldo
gosh.
was one of the pound for pound best in the world.
Yes.
And he let Connor mind F him like nobody's business.
Totally.
And
Totally.
it does happen. I mean, not a lot of fighters necessarily fall for it, but that effect, man. Mike Tyson used to do it. He said in his documentary, like, a lot of these guys were done before the bell even rang, just
Mm,
because I was so in their head. I didn't even have to really say anything. Just the specter of Mike Tyson was enough for
yes.
them to be like, damn, do I want this smoke? I don't think I want this
I
smoke. This is Mike
don't.
Tyson here.
This is just the money, man. I might be able to get a lucky punch in here and there, but he's gonna annihilate me, and I am Mike Tyson.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and even Mike, talking about he was very fearful walking to the ring. He was very fearful. He dreamed about his opponent beating him, etc. And like he says, he stepped into the cage. He was a conqueror. He was Alexander. He was
Mm,
there's nobody that could hurt him. But it's I think fear's a part of it. But like life, it's just how you deal with it, how you react to fear.
most definitely, and I think working, well, training within a sport, especially a combat sport, I think that does tremendous things for the confidence, for your thinking process, decision making processing,
Yeah.
the whole package really.
Well, and I interviewed Ed Suarez, who was Anderson Silva's manager and also is the CEO of Legacy Fighting Alliance, and I was asking him about the night he got knocked out by Chris Weidman. I'm like, why would he put himself in such a vulnerable situation? Not to go back too far in the fight, but normally your fighting stance is 1 foot ahead, 1 foot back. He was
Hmm.
literally standing with both feet perpendicular to each other, and he kind of was
Yes.
clowning, and
Yeah.
Chris caught him. And
Yeah.
then, and Ed was like, listen, man, it was stupid to have done that. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say it was stupid, but he was destroying everyone. He was the best in the world at what he did, and everyone
Mm,
kept coming up to him, telling him how awesome he was, and
yeah.
he knew that because he was the one doing it. So it
Yes.
creates almost like Mike Tyson in Japan before he fought Buster Douglas. He wasn't. He was partying. He was hanging
Mm,
out with hookers and this and that. You get in this certain level of complacency, and you believe your own. Not that it's BS, because like I said, Anderson was
it's
showing and
hype.
proving.
It's
It's
hype.
hype, and you start believing your own hype. And there's always, I don't care who you are, whether you're in a cage or whatever, there's always someone out there tougher than you. who's prepared. Like as you're sitting there, like Connor, I don't think Connor's ever necessarily going to be the same who he was when he first came in. He just sold his half of his stake in
For
proper 12 for
12.
almost
Yeah.
whatever it was, 300 million or whatever it
Yeah.
was. He's not wanting any more for any of that stuff. So that in my opinion, as a fighter, and not as I've never fought, but I can only imagine that reduces your desire to go out there and get punched in the face when
Of
you could
course.
just, you literally do not need to work again. Your family, your progeny, you've created generational wealth. So I think that diminishes a hunger to some degree. I could be wrong, but just even looking at his last fight, it's hard to super quantify that because I think that was a combination of ring rust and Dustin Poirier has been on a tear
Yes.
while Connor's been out not fighting. And I think there is a certain level of ring rust to some degree because, Connor's been to the mountaintop and then some. A lot of these guys like Dustin, they're still waiting to get there, fighting to get there. So
Paid.
I think it diminishes the fire a little bit.
100%. I would 100% agree with that. I think there was a boxer who said something about sleeping in, he doesn't sleep in silk sheets or something like that. And who the
Oh,
hell was it?
that was Marvin Hagler. That was Marvin
Oh,
Hagler. He said it's hard for me to get up and run at 5 a.m. when I'm getting out of silk sheets.
yes. Yeah, I'm
But
challenging him.
that's the discipline though. Like if you see, it's called HBO Legendary Nights. It was a great series on HBO from some of the most iconic fights in the game, and one of them was Hearns and Hagler. And Hearns, when he would, or Hagler, when he would train, he would call it going to jail. He would go
Yes.
to a spot where he wouldn't, no women, no drink, no nothing. But it's having that discipline, even though when your belly's full, the bank account's full,
Hmm.
to still get up and put that work in, man. It's a testament to these guys, man.
Definitely the mental fortitude people have, as you say, if you're a millionaire, no, you say you're a thousandaire and you've come from absolutely nothing, and you're doing
Yeah,
something you
yeah,
enjoy, you're prize fighting, and then you've bought your mom a house, you've bought yourself a house, you brought your siblings maybe a house or helped them to get a house, everyone's got cars, you've been on the vacations, it's
yeah.
you're at a point where you've pretty much got everything. So what are you fighting for now? Are you fighting for money, or is it for the love and the passion of it? And as you say, once you've got so much, and in Connor's case specifically, if he was more active, and whether this is um all down to Dana White or not, but after his that huge layoff he had and he demolished Cowboy in that very quick time,
Yeah.
he was saying, "Look, I want to be fighting two times or three times a year," and we didn't hear nothing. And it
Well,
wasn't
again,
until
I know he has his own personal stuff going on, which I mean, none of this lends itself to staying on top of your game. Like he's a multimillionaire now. I know he's had his own personal legal problems,
Mhm.
and he hasn't been as active. And the sport is changing day to day. These
Yes.
fighters are so freaking incredible and incredibly trained. You can't dip out for a couple years, a year and
No,
a half, 2 years. I mean, with Conor, he gets obviously special dispensations, and he gets, he's at the top of the ranks. But anybody who's starting from the bottom, I mean, those guys are freaking, it like they call it a murderer's row. Your top 10 in any
mm,
division is a murderer's row of cats who are just waiting to take your head off. And there's no, again, that hunger, I don't think is just there for him. So you can't be complacent in any time during the UFC, but especially now. These people are coming in, they're assassins, man.
of course. And it's a young man sport. It is a total young man sport. And one of the comments he said is, "Oh, those calf kicks. Oh, I wasn't, those really
Yeah.
affected me." But come on, we've been knowing about calf kicks now for a couple of years now. How effective they've been. When Henry Cejudo lost, rolled his foot out on the fight. Was it with DJ Demetrius Johnson
Um,
the
it
first time?
possibly was. I think it
Yeah.
possibly was.
And also with the guy who's just come from Bellator, Michael Chandler.
Michael Chandler, yeah, is now a St. Louis native, is
He,
now in the UFC.
this
And
is it.
that's what Jens was talking about in the breakdown of the fight and just in general about how the calf kicks are being used. We've seen leg kicks that
Mm,
hit the thigh
yes.
and that common peroneal nerve, which just immobilizes the leg. And when you hit it enough times, it just inflames and it decreases your mobility. But the same goes for low calf kicks, man. I don't know if you remember Karate Kid 3, that evil sensei was like,
Ooh,
if a man can't stand, he can't fight. If a man can't
yes.
see, he can't fight. But if you can't stand, and you see it all the time, that's
Mm,
why Conor McGregor was so successful in his second fight against Nate Diaz. He came
yes.
out firing on those legs. And,
Yes.
Nate's a boxer, he's a
Mm,
good striker. But when you compromise your mobility and a leg, that changes how you throw fights, how you move, how you
Yeah.
fire off your shots. And so again, success leaves clues, and I'm glad to see these guys picking up on it. And I see even commenting for our last few caged aggression fights, last 3 months, you just saw it, like fighters coming out, starting out with leg kicks, and just hammering them because
Mm.
they know it's effective. You know, again, if your fighter can't move the way he naturally moves, it's way more of an easy target to get to.
100%. 100%. It's all about developing a strategy and a game plan, obviously, which you're going to come in with, but having the adaptability and the skills to say, oh shit, this isn't working. Shit, look, oh these oh, I'm gonna have to change stance, and
Yeah,
then let's look at it. If you're an orthodox, like how much time are you spending training in the other stance? Like it should be at this level of the game, and as we're highlighting how eh, these youngsters are coming in, man, and they're coming in like training since they were six, totally
that's
disciplined, like almost
that's what
like
I say. I always say they're coming out of the womb with a blue belt. You know what I mean? It's like,
this is it. They're doing absolutely everything. They're doing it all where rather than maybe 10, 15 years ago, someone maybe, uh jiu-jitsu, BJJ, taekwondo, and then they'll say, you know what, I'm going to transition to mixed martial arts. I'll work on a bit of grappling, blah blah
yeah,
blah. But I'm a specialist in this area, like Wonder Boy. But
yeah.
now everyone is pretty much a mixed martial artist.
Yo, you're absolutely correct, and that's been going on for a while. And that one of my favorites was cats out of the Milicic camp, Robbie Lawler, specifically Matt
Yes.
Hughes. Man, when Matt Hughes was the champ, he really, because the early UFCs, it was all about what was your singular discipline, and
Hmm.
some of it worked. Like Mark Coleman, former heavyweight champ, he was the
Mm,
father of ground and pound. He would
yes.
take you down as a wrestler and pound you out. Not a lot of submissions, not a kind of anaconda chokes, dark stars chokes. It worked for him. Even almost like Chuck Liddell with a wrestling background and could choke you out. He was all about just knocking you out.
Hmm.
But like Matt Hughes, the military fighting system really, in my opinion, was the Jeet Kune Do of MMA. And if anybody knows what Jeet Kune Do is, it's Bruce Lee's martial art of
Yes.
combining all the different martial arts, taking what works and dispelling what doesn't work. And that to me is so practical. And so many people followed that lineage of the military fighting system, becoming complete martial artists. Like Pat said, if he was to ever select a team again, he would get D1, start with D1 wrestlers, and
Mm,
then build them from there. Because most fights end on the ground, but
hmm.
you definitely need to have the additional techniques of not just taking him down, but like Matt Hughes, he was a killer striker. He could knock you out. He could wrestle you to death and slam you like he did Frank Trigg twice, and he could choke you out like he choked out Frank Trigg twice. So the multiple dimensional aspect of MMA that really began implemented with not just the military fighting system, but others, like you see now, you don't have just one. Like a Josh Koscheck was just kind of a wrestler, and he had
Yeah.
to refine his, but he didn't quite make that transition. Or any other fighters who couldn't quite move into the full 360 of
Mm.
mixed martial arts. They stayed in one singular discipline, and it cost them. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Everyone is so encompassed the true art, the true essence of mixed martial art. It's awesome.
It really is. It really is, and it's exciting to see what is going to be happening next over this next few years. Um, I'm really still hopeful. Obviously, outside of the pandemic, etc., I'm hopeful that we can see. Obviously, we haven't seen anything with Bellator and Rising this year, but I'm really hopeful that we can see some promotion, some cross promotional work, and not necessarily trading. I'm talking about, let's do something together, and let's see how we
Mm-hmm.
can cross fertilize, promotions and stuff, and see who's the best ultimately.
Well, yeah, and ultimately that's what it would prove. Like, who was the exact best? I mean, obviously you don't. You have a few promotions, but I'm like UFC is pretty much the tried and true pinnacle.
Hmm.
And a lot of people who don't necessarily, for lack of a better term, cut it, go to like Bellator, not knocking them, but like Brian Bader, he didn't win the championship in the UFC, but he did when he went to Bellator. Again, not necessarily knocking them because they're all still badass fighters. But I would love to see that happen. I don't know. Just fight promoters and the fight game. It's tough to see that happening. Just because
Yeah,
UFC is like, I'm not gonna you know
risk it.
well, risk it, or somewhat risk it, but even lend credibility to a Bellator by cross promoting, like you said. I mean, Dana knows they're like the second tier or whatever
Hmm.
the next best of the UFC, but it's almost like, let them do them, we'll do us. any cross, like, yeah, I don't see it. I see the UFC coming on top of that on that one, and it just, I don't think that would necessarily would help the Bellator brand, because it would wind up proving, I think, what everybody kind of already knew. It would be
Mm.
exciting though. It would be definitely exciting.
It would for name value for historical purposes. I think at some point, and I know I've hinted to this before, whether there's some oligarch out there, some trillionaire, you know, wants to wave some money around and say, look, I'm creating this this program, and I want to have all of you promotions fight at this event. I'm going to create this belt system, and whoever wins wins, kind of thing.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
have
Well, that's almost like, as a, I don't watch professional wrestling too much anymore, or sports entertainment, whatever they call it. That's very similar to Cody Rhodes nowadays asking Vince McMahon of the WWE, "Hey, let's do some cross promotional stuff." I mean, obviously, one would give a rub to the other. The WWE, being the more
mm,
pinnacle, would give a rub to AEW, but I just don't see Vince putting that over in any way, because he would just be like, why would I give any shine whatsoever to a competing promotion? I personally wouldn't care if I was Vince, because I'm like, I know my stuff's the better stuff,
yes.
and then they
Well,
would just get a small rub from it.
it's tried and tested. I mean, we grew up on WWF, aka WWE. AEW, from what I can see, I mean, I'm clearly not into, that type of stuff anymore. But from what I've seen, the highlights and stuff, it looks like a very good product.
I haven't watched any of it either. Like, the wrestling, I love listening to Jim Cornette's podcast. If you know who that is,
Yes.
he's, yeah, I love Jim. I mean, he's so protective of the business that once was, but it's so far beyond that now. And I hate to even, Vince let the cat out of the bag. I mean, we now know how the magicians do their tricks, and it's not
Mm,
even about like or suspending any disbelief anymore. Now it's just about high spot after high spot. This is
yeah,
awesome. I mean, there's
yeah.
no story to it. It's just all these crazy moves where, I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, I don't really watch it anymore,
But
but
but Jeff, it's so big. It's still so big. I mean, if you can correct me, but isn't it as big as it was when we were growing up?
no, definitely not as big as when we were growing up. But I mean, there's when we were growing up, I mean, outside of the WWE, there were also territories that slowly started to disappear.
Yes.
But I mean, even with the network anymore, wrestlers are not making, I don't think, near as what they were. Back in the day, they had the options of territories. And even now, with pay-per-views, wrestlers used to get a bonus, or, a pay-per-view cut depending on where they were on the pay-per-view. Now there's no real pay-per-view money, because everyone's buying the network for $5. So
Ah,
WWE Network's making a killing, but the wrestlers aren't making near what I think they used to. The road schedule is probably a little different, still a little hectic. They're still paying their own costs as far as travel, rent a car, hotels. But
wait, whoa,
I
whoa,
think they're,
whoa, 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 whoa. They're paying their own costs, Jeff.
yeah, the wrestlers, most of the times, if not 90% of the time, if not more, they pay their own travel, pay their own hotel rooms, rental cars, plane, whatever.
I didn't.
That's been going on for years.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. That
Yeah.
that just seems like if that's part of your business, isn't it? Isn't that part of
Well,
work?
they're not employees. They're 1099, what they call 1099. They're
Ah,
they're they're independent contractors. So
yes.
yeah,
That old gag.
yeah, exactly. That's been working for a long time, which is such bullshit. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cuss if I can't cuss,
No,
but
to go for it, man. Go for it.
Vince is saying these stars can't do third party stuff like Twitter or Cameo and all this other crap, but yet they're making them pay. I mean, they're paying them peanuts compared to what it used to be, and they're paying their own way. And now they can't go do other third party ventures to supplement their income. It's bogus.
Wow.
I'd be like, I'm with that if I'm an employee of the WWE,
Yeah,
health insurance, all this other stuff. But if I'm an independent contractor, I'm doing what the fuck I want to do. I
totally.
mean, but a lot of these guys sign those contracts anyway, because there's not a lot of options at all. You got TNA, Ring of Honor, WWE, AEW, but obviously WWE is the king of the castle. So
Yeah.
these guys kind of
Ma-
got
ah,
to
d-
take it.
ah, they're clearly skilled, athletic, the specimens, both male and female. I don't know. Is it really is the allure and attraction of being a wrestler that applicable anymore? Maybe they should, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, especially the young. I mean, you got obviously wrestling too, like you said about UFC or MMA is a young man's sport. There's still most, and I'm not knocking anybody because I'm a mark too. Most of them are just marks for the sport, Like, I just want to have said I worked for the WWE. I don't care how poorly. And they find out once they get there. They get there like, oh my God, I'm with the WWE. And then after a couple of years, they're treated poorly and they're asked for the release, and either they get it or they don't get it.
Mm.
But it's more the idea they're enamored with, I think, oftentimes. Some people are straight up good workers and just, love wrestling and want to be, take bumps and be a part of the sport. But I think
Yeah.
other people, it's just more the romanticization of
Yes.
being with, I'm with the WWE, even though it's not even close to what it was. And that's changed so much that even just the last rather short period of time, you just don't see, like like Jim Cornette has said, they've I'm sorry, they've taken away the stars. There's no stars anymore. Everyone's just kind of, whatever the word is, just it's just
Min-
a hodgepodge of all these just very similar characters. You don't see Andre the Giants or Big John Studd or
Yeah.
King Kong. Everyone looks the same. Everybody's ripped. Everybody's tan. Everybody's hair is all wet when they come out. Like, you just don't see this variety of characters like you used to see anymore. And they've kind of made it so we don't want to create stars. We just want to create these personalities that people want to see. No more Rocks. No more Stone Colds. No more CM Punks.
Mm. I don't know. I guess it's still working. I mean, it's still clearly a viable business, you know.
Well, which is interesting because their ratings are just dog shit. They're not even close to compared to what they used to be back. Even the Monday Night Wars, or even with Stone Cold. I mean, the ratings are just abysmal. That's why I found it so funny that NBC, the Peacock network, basically bought the WWE or licensed it to stream their stuff for like 6 years or whatever it is, because it's just not as, I mean, it's still a thing, but it's not nearly as financially viable as it used to be. For the WWE, it is.
Yeah.
It's because they're making hella money off the network, but for the wrestlers, there's no trickle down. They get what they get, and that's pretty much it. Like I said, there's no more DVD sales, so there's no more like commission checks or whatever to get. There's no more pay-per-views. So I mean, those guys used to get hugely paid off DVD sales, pay-per-view buys. That's all gone. Now they just
So
get kind of a flat rate just to be there.
how about merchandising? Are they still doing like the little figurines and the belts and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff?
yeah. I imagine. I don't know for sure, but I can only imagine on the they sell T-shirts and figurines still, but it's just again their revenue is reduced to just a fraction of what it used to be.
Poor Vince.
I know. I know.
I don't know.
Poor Vince.
Yeah. It can't last forever, unfortunately. It can't last forever.
No, well, and that's the thing. There's wrestling has a cyclical nature as far as popularity, but even your biggest company, I mean, even like the UFC, I mean, it'll be around for a while, but something will come up eventually. I mean, I know that's a big dog to try to topple off the mountain, but
Well,
nothing lasts forever.
do you know who I think is close? I mean, I haven't done any financials, and well, I've looked at something, and it doesn't show that one championship are as financially stable as you'd think. But in regards to their product and the fighters they've got, a lot of them aren't as well known and household names, but I think they're very close.
One,
Yeah.
without a doubt. I mean, that's they're the biggest. I mean, that's Asia. Asia's the biggest continent on the planet. So it's
Mm.
like that's when they pack those venues, it's like it's huge. I don't know how much
Huge.
money they're making necessarily, but yeah, there's I mean that's a huge market. And if we think the UFC's got the USA and the globe, not mostly the USA lockdown,
Mhm.
USA. I mean, that's just North America, man. When you talk about Asia, that's a huge, huge market. And like I said, like you said, I haven't done any financial crunching on any of those numbers, but I can only imagine. I can only imagine how, because it's hugely popular over there.
Crazy, and also which I think is a good thing that they're doing. It's not just obviously mixed martial arts. They're doing the kickboxing, they're doing the Muay Thai. Uh,
That's what I love. Yeah, I definitely love that. And that's why it's easy to get fatigue, man. Easy to get MMA fatigue. So you want, like I said, switch it up. Have some bouts be MMA, have some bouts be boxing, some bouts be Muay Thai or kickboxing,
mm,
some be grappling, jujitsu.
yes,
Variety's the spice of life, man. And I think that's important because it's, you know, you could easily get MMA fatigue, in my humble
totally.
opinion.
Well, especially being in North America. I mean, I don't have access to watch the PFL. I don't have access to watch, well, LFA if you get Fight Pass. I think that LFA is on Fight Pass, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But outside that, if you don't have Fight Pass, for instance, The only
They've
thing
got a
you
lot
could,
of promotions on Fight Pass too. Some good fights, some good fighters.
well, they've taken, which is I'm very disappointed. I'm happy, but at the same time, I'm disappointed. Cage Warriors, that used to be on, free to air television over here.
Was it
And
Cage Fury?
no Cage Warriors, the UK one. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
they've done a deal, I think, as of last year or the year before, and they're strictly on on Fight Pass now.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too. And I mean, honestly, kudos to Dana for providing a platform for upping. I mean, because he could just totally be Vince about it and just totally try to squash him or buy him out.
Yeah,
So I mean, I think that's really really cool. That I mean, he knows that no one's really going to be touching UFC, but a lot of those companies like LFA, they're feeder systems
exactly.
for the UFC, so it behooves them to help promote those platforms. And again, similar to Cage Aggression, I mean, we've had a few fighters on Cage Aggression that have gone on to the Ultimate Fighter or given a UFC contract. I mean, so these platforms are no, I mean, these promotions are no joke. And again, I mean, Dana can be totally selfish about it, but I think that's really cool to provide, attention and a platform for other promotions who are doing really good stuff to be seen. I don't know how
Yes.
much money they're getting for it, for how much juice is worth the squeeze, quite frankly.
Well, it's getting more attention because obviously it's, outside of the UK and maybe, some parts of Europe, no one else was really paying attention unless you're a hardcore. Then you might be looking, okay, how can I watch, that event over there in the UK, obviously with the time zone difference, et cetera, et cetera. So it gives more eyes, it lends more eyes on the promotion itself, on the fighters, and it is clearly a feeder system. It's clearly a feeder
Yeah.
system to the UFC.
Well, and again, there's a global audience for all these promotions, dude. And even with our pay-per-view metrics, we're able to see what buys are going on across the planet. Obviously, we're selling, hell is in the U.S., but the U.K., Ireland, Northern Africa, uh, Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's really cool to see. I mean, obviously, it's a global sport, and it's growing faster than I think any sport I've ever seen. But I mean, I think it's really heartening to see. I mean, like I said, these kids at Cage Aggression are super talented, and with this platform we set up, the pay per view, and the production is just through the roof. I mean, it's cool to see that people have interest in watching even just not even a small promotion, but a Midwest promotion like ours, because there's just so much talent out here, man, so much talent.
Well, the good thing about it is you've got the Hall of Famers, Milicic
Well,
and
that's definitely unique. I don't know of a lot of promotions that have two UFC legends
mm,
calling their fights for them. I mean, that again, that's something, we're never going to be the UFC, but we try to establish different things which differentiate us from other promotions, whether it's having Pat and Jen's calling the fights, our pay-per-view platform. Within our pay-per-view platform, you could buy the fights through specific fighters. We call it like basically a referral code. So if I was fighting, you could buy the pay-per-view through Jeff Wilson and like proceeds. I think it's 20, a certain percentage. I forget what it is.
yeah,
I get. So if you're a popular fighter fighting out of Jackson Winkledon or a big camp and you got a huge social media following, you want to come to Cage Aggression because not only are you going to get paid your official pay, but you could also leverage that popularity and have your crew, your hometown, your city buy the pay-per-view through your name, and then you cash out that way too. And
yeah.
that's a huge component that we've set up just really from COVID. You know what I mean? The gate,
Mhm.
we can't do a full capacity venue like we've wanted to. So I think with this referral code for specific fighters to have their pay-per-view bought through, it helps kind of supplement um, their income that they
Yeah.
would have got on a big gate. So that's a huge, very unique aspect that I don't see any other promotion doing.
And kudos, as you say, hats off for doing that. It's, clearly the promotion is not just focused on, becoming the best or the greatest kind of thing and profit
Right.
or orientated. It's about, the 360 holistic view. We can bring forth some good talent, we can help promote them, we can, give them some extra money where possible, you help us while we help you kind of thing.
It's a symbiotic relationship without a
Mm,
doubt. Even Jordan Henman, the guy who suffered the big injury after the spinning elbow, he's joining the commentating team, but we have him on the referral code to buy the pay-per-view, even though he's not fighting, because he incurred, I think it was like $80,000 in medical expenses. Some of
wow.
it was taken care of through insurance, but he still definitely has some left over. So again, this referral code helps him, bridge the gap on what he still owes for his medical expenses. So the promotion, and Mike Goodwin, the CEO, very, very much so takes care of his fighters, looks out for his fighters. And I'm just growing up. not just in watching the fight game and promoters, whether it's Don King, Vince McMahon,
Yeah.
they tend to be sometimes very shady and
Mm,
not very take care of their fighters very well. But like Mike Goodwin, man, he's just an extreme gentleman. He's been doing this for 10 years and he's got nothing but love for his fighters. So I think that's another reason why I find it really cool to be a part of the organization.
excellent. And talk a little bit more about the obviously you've had, was it a third of the capacity, was it?
Oh, what?
Third of the
Yeah,
capacity?
yeah. I think we're down to, I think it's 30%. So
Damn.
what we can normally do at 3,000, we got to take it down, however much that is, and that's what we've been working with from October, November, December. And Iowa is one of the looser states that have loosened the restrictions, masks, etc.
Hmm.
But this particular venue, the River Center, still has their specific rules up. So this time we can't do it at full capacity, but we're hoping we have another fight May 8th, 8th and 9th that weekend. It's only going to be a 2-night event, only a 2-night event.
I know you say only.
Yeah, but hopefully we'll be up to full capacity by then. If not, again, we still have the pay-per-view platform. But yeah, we're looking to. I saw Dana White just announced that the first full capacity
Yeah.
fight, 161 or whatever it is, down in Jacksonville here in a few weeks. I actually be down there, and I think Pat's going to come down, so we might do some live broadcasting from that first in a long time full capacity event. Man, I can't wait to see it. It's so weird watching these fights and these everything with no crowd. It's just
Well,
so weird.
initially, yeah, I thought the same. But at the same time, I can see its pluses and I can see its negatives. Negative, and obviously the pluses is the atmosphere and all of that, the noise and
Yeah, yeah,
um, but with just that silence, being able to hear the blows, being able to hear the when they'll turn the mics on, to hear the corners, shouting
yeah,
instructions and all that.
yeah.
It gets it back to the rawest element of the sport of the game in essence, and it takes the crowd elements out of it. So it can't be a case of, oh well, the crowds, some fighters, well, the ego, as we know, is a very powerful thing,
Oh,
and
sure.
you have thousands of people, and I don't want to look bad in front of these people. I've said I was going to knock this guy out in the first round,
Yeah. Well, I would
first.
imagine the focus element is more enhanced because you don't have that kind of distraction of
Mhm.
and when you watch fights and somebody punches somebody, it's like ooh. And
Mm,
even though you have your game plan for the more undisciplined fighters, that kind of can sway them. Like, oh, you think that was an ooh? Watch this. I'm gonna get him back. You
yes,
know what I mean? It just
yes,
kind of lends itself to becoming unfocused. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved it because it's just whether it's WrestleMania or UFC, the crowd experience is a huge part of it. Maybe not so much for the fighters, but just like the viewing audience. But I've always wondered. I was actually, coming as I was driving out here to the park to do this conversation. I wanted to ask Pat about that because how much would that matter to him? Having the crowd there, having it not there, and I think as focused as Pat was, as disciplined he was, he'd be like, I wouldn't care. I'm
yeah,
just listening for my corner. Because
exactly,
I mean, I know he doesn't have that ego aspect of doing it for the crowd. I mean, the crowd bonus is awesome when you knock somebody the hell out, but
yes,
during the fight, I mean, like someone like a Pat is probably way more focused. But I can only imagine some of these other fights. I'm sure their thought process is probably different. On some love it, some don't mind it, some hate it.
yeah. Because I guess it's the energy, you come into it, or there's
Without a
probably
doubt.
there's 40 people in there, camera crew, and Dana
Yeah.
sitting on, like, where the hell, where am I, man? Is this a
Well,
sparring
that's why.
match?
That's what. Yeah, exactly. I'm in the gym. That's
Yeah.
why when we fought or when we called Jordan Hinman's fight and he caught that elbow. I mean, you couldn't. The crowd. I mean, there was a nice crowd, but it wasn't a full crowd. There was no food or drink served, so everyone was just literally just sitting there, and you could hear a pin dropped on cotton. So when
Mm,
he caught that elbow, it was like a hammer hitting a coconut, and you just heard that pop, and everybody in there heard it. Like even Pat, like I said, if you go on Cage Aggression and you watch that fight and watch the end of it, it was only a first round fight. Like Pat hopped up, like he hopped up, and I heard. I mean, they were both right in front of us, in front of the commentating table there. But like even just Pat intrinsically knew, like, oh, that's bad, that's really bad, and it was
mm.
just like I said, you just heard it that just reverberated throughout that like silent crowd. So definitely
It's
has its interesting elements to it with the no crowd.
100%. It's going to be good, financially for the organizations, and if the fighters then receive some extra money based upon that, even better. Because, as we all know, the higher up you go as well, it becomes a very slanted view in regards to the pay that the promotion receives versus
Yeah,
the pay. It's crazy. It's
it
absolutely
really is.
crazy.
It really is.
And they've got that, so there's that conglomerate have got that case against the UFC for pay, which seems to have gone to the next step. Have you heard anything about that?
I know there was a class action with a bunch of different fighters. That was a
Yeah.
little while ago. I thought it had gotten dismissed, but I just haven't stayed up on it. It was like John Fitch, Mark Hunt.
Yes. Apparently, as of maybe a month or so ago, maybe a bit longer, they're actually considering. It's at a point where the UFC should potentially make a settlement or something, or file some other motions. So
Possibly.
they've
Well, I know
presented a
part
lot
of
of
that was the
information.
unionization. I don't know if Mark Hunt and those guys were talking about unionizing fighters and that kind of stuff. I don't know if that was part of the same suit, but there definitely needs to be some changes made. I mean, the amount of money they wound up getting paid, whatever it is, 12 to show, and then like they
Yeah,
got to pay their corners, they got to pay their. I mean, they're literally fighting for peanuts, man.
for nothing. I mean, 8-8. Like, what are we talking?
Yeah,
4-4. Like, what are we talking about on the
yeah,
UFC? You're a
yeah.
UFC fighter, right? And everyone's like, UFC, oh my God, you're fighting for the UFC. Yeah, 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 yeah. And then you get your
Yeah, I still
fight.
can't pay my bills. But
I can.
again, it's very similar to the kids wanting to sign up for the WWE, even though it's not the same as it was. It's almost the romanticization,
Mm,
not necessarily just to be a part of the UFC, but they know you reach those pinnacles, man. You start getting those pay-per-view cuts. You start getting that Conor McGregor money or whatever
mm,
the money that is. But again, it's almost like the percentage of people who are going to make it to the UFC is definitely smaller. Any
yeah.
professional fight or sports organization,
Yes.
and to get to the upper echelon of making the money is even a bigger, long shot. And I'm not deterring people to not do it. I'm just saying, what is the juice worth the squeeze, man? Because a lot of these guys are fighting and fighting and getting skipped over in the ranks. The title
Yes.
shot that they've earned for freaking peanuts, man.
Well,
For freaking, and especially.
since you've said that, the last event that took place with the no contest, where we've got Leon Rocky Edwards on a 8 fight winning streak, ranked
Mm-hmm.
number 3. Should have fought Tyrone Woodley, but the event took place and they had to cancel it, etc. Then they tried to make that fight with the upstart Hamzat Shamaev, and they
Oh yeah, the
cancelled
guy with the
that.
COVID. Yeah,
Yes, yeah. So he's got COVID now, and lasting effects of that apparently. So that's
yeah,
been cancelled 3 times. So then Leon's like, look, I want to fight. I want to fight. I can't be sitting out here all this time. It's been a year plus.
yeah,
Takes the fight with Bilal. And from what it looked like, if the IPOT didn't take place, he was going to get taken out very quickly.
Leon or the other gentleman.
The other guy.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's from what I did not see that fight, unfortunately, but I heard he was pretty much winning anyway.
He looked excellent. He looked very, very good. Now, as a result of this, yesterday, what does Dana White come out with and say? Yeah, so Usman is now going to be fighting Jorge Masvidal. We're going to do a part 2 because he only had a little bit of training.
Yeah, yeah,
Didn't
yeah,
get full camp, and even though we know
yeah,
that's lies, and he was training, he was well and training for this opportunity, and he was helping also train Dustin Poirier. It's
yeah.
it's like, what are we doing, Uncle Dana?
I know. Well, again, and he's over the last several years has not completely abdicated the rankings, but and part of me likes it and part of me doesn't like it because I don't like to see these people who've been working their butt off who are in the rankings get skipped over. But again, it has to be a balance. It's like Dana is so mindful of fights that are going to sell, not just fights to adhere to the rankings. He wants to make money off them. You know what
Oh
I mean? So
yes.
I don't know how much he sees huge value. I know he's not a huge fan of Tyron, and I'm sure he's not a huge fan of how the Leon Edwards fight ended. But Leon's like, come on, man, I'm not running it back with that guy. I've been whooping everybody's ass. What are you
And it,
doing? I beat him, and I was going to beat him. Yes,
yeah.
his eyes got poked. I get it, and I'm sorry for that. But
Hmm.
it's like, can we move on, or do I have to now train for however long to fight this guy again just to delay my, getting a title shot. I mean, it's a tough game, man. I mean, I hate to be in Dana's shoes, but it's again, it's tough to strike that fine balance of appeasing the fans and adhering to quote unquote the rankings.
Yes, but we can go down to lightweights and we can look at Dustin Poirier, who took out Conor McGregor, who he shouldn't have, according to all of the lead up and all of the media. Oh,
Well, I
Conor.
knew. I honestly I knew because Dustin had been murking people
Exactly.
and
He's
looking
improved. Exactly. He's improved
yeah, and that
tremendously.
last fight was however many years ago, and he's been on a tear while Connor just hasn't been.
No,
I mean, they're supremely talented, but
exactly.
I know some people don't believe in ring rust. I mean, maybe it's just not ring rust, but just inactivity. I guess that's
Inactivity.
almost a different
Yeah.
euphemism for ring rust, but it's like you
Well,
got to
look.
stay active in this
Well, look.
game. These guys are freaking.
If
They're
if
hungry.
if you've just learned how, if you're riding a bike and then you start riding a bike. No, let's go even further, one step further. You've learned to ride a penny farthing, and you've been riding that for a month, and then you put it down and start just riding a regular mountain bike, and then you pick it up the next year. Are you going to be able to jump on that damn penny farthing?
Right. Right. No, I mean, yeah, people say it's just like riding a bike, but I mean, no, there's certain adjustments you need to make as far as balance and just, I mean, just
Mm,
just the very subtle things. I mean, there's one thing to spar and there's one thing to work out. I mean, it's just something else about being in the ring or in the cage and
yes,
actual, Poirier's coming at you. And I mean, his game plan was solid. Connor
solid.
had nothing for those leg kicks. He didn't
Nothing.
check us. I don't remember him checking a single one. Even
No.
after he just kept lighting them up and lighting them up.
Yeah.
Just kind of
He
let it happen.
pretty much, and as the saying for Dustin is now, paid in full, Jeff.
As well he should be, dude. As well he should be.
Give the man the belt, man. I mean, stop courting Khabib and the media saying, "Yeah, I know he said he's retired, but we gotta run that. He's gotta come back for Conor." But why would he come back for Conor if
I know.
Conor's already got beaten? And like, what are we
Well,
talking about?
him losing against Dustin did not help his case against a rematch against Khabib. Khabib completely dominated him. And so maybe if he had, I guess he did fight Cerrone again after that and looked pretty impressive, looked impressive. But yeah, it did him no favors as far as calling out Khabib to lose to Dustin. Not that Dustin was a slouch and it was a great fight. And Dustin, I think, deserves a title shot.
He's the champ. He's the champ in my
He's the
eyes.
interim now.
Nah,
Oh,
nah,
yeah.
no. I'm just in my eyes. He's the champion. He that was the for the undisputed strap, or at minimum for the interim. He's the champ again because
Yeah.
he's beat everybody. He's done what he needs to do. He's been in
Well,
some
and I don't even know
crazy
those
wars.
exact rankings, but if Khabib dipped out, like who else is ranked number one? And
It's Dustin. Dustin.
yeah, it's like he deserves at least that interim.
It's madness. I mean, trustfully, well, I think there's Gaethje and Chandler in the works.
Yeah, that's coming up. I think I forget what they said. I don't even remember, but I just saw that announced yesterday. I think that'll be a good one. That'll be a good one.
It sure will. It sure will. I mean, Mike has looked excellent in that very short performance he had with poor Dan Hooker. I expected a lot more from Dan Hooker in that fight.
I'm wondering if he's going to get how do I say this? Equal treatment from USADA because Mr. Chandler, he looks great, but I don't think that's all necessarily spinach and bananas, chicken breast.
Maybe it's chicken breast from Mexico.
Yeah, maybe some of them Alistair Overeem horse meats.
This is it. It's I've heard that as well. I haven't. He hasn't been busted for it though, has he? Historically,
Overeem?
no. Chandler.
No, not Chandler. Well, he fought in Bellator. I don't know how their testing system works. I don't think they use USADA.
No.
I think it's a less stringent
Yes.
testing system than. But even USADA, I think it's very select. I mean,
It's a
I don't.
strange one because look at the John Jones thing and picograms and all these
Yeah,
stupid stuff,
yeah,
and like, what are we
yeah,
doing? If he's
yeah.
been caught, if he's been caught with an illegal flipping steroid in his system, then he can't fight, and you can't move a whole event to a totally different state so the guy can fight.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. Well, and that was so beautiful. It's like, no, it seems like he will always test for some level of picogram. There's nothing we can do about it. Like, really? So
That's it.
we're just gonna like just have to just give up the. Oh no, he's on something, but it's a pico, which I get. A picogram's small, but it's like, what's up with him? Has he been doing it so much that he will always have that in him,
Yes.
or like what's going on?
Well, that just proves two things, that the tests are that sophisticated that they can pick up like minuscule amounts of any kind of
Yes,
drug. Um,
yes, exactly.
and then
Which is
also,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
also that could it have been a whole batch of tainted supplements that this guy's been using for a lengthy period of time.
Well, which is hugely possible because I know some of them. I mean, someone was telling me they combine, they accidentally combine bad stuff with good stuff when they make them over in China or wherever they make them. So they won't fully clean out
The
the
vats,
tainted
yeah,
vats or whatever, and then they'll put the other stuff in. So there is these trace amounts. I'm not even sure if that's. I figured, I don't know. I figured they were doing some more injectable stuff, but I don't know. But
exactly.
like you said, USADA, they test for. I mean, it's down to the clearly the picogram.
Which I've never even heard of before until this
I
situation.
know, I know, and
Picogram Jones.
I'm just not sure they test. I know they test people a lot. I remember Dominic Cruz talking about, 6 a.m. they're at their door, and I've heard other fighters say, man, they're at my door at like 5, 6 a.m., which is just crazy. But I mean, just looking at some of these fighters, I'm just like, man, you're getting up there in age, and you look freaking amazing,
Well, I'm
like a Brock Lesnar. Like, yeah, there's a wellness policy in the WWE. Are you kidding me?
I'm
Oh,
very
Brock, you can
interested.
skip this wellness policy check this week.
Oh yeah, don't worry, Brock. You can, you can
Yeah,
pass this
you're
score.
good. We know you're on all the juice, so
And a little bit more.
and a little bit more. I love him though. I mean, he's incredible athlete, but
Most definitely, but very much exposed when he fights. If he's fighting mixed martial arts, he does get exposed if he's fighting a well versed and rounded opponent. Um,
yeah, who did he beat for the title? It was an impressive win. I think it was Shane Carwin.
Carwin,
Pretty a very
yes.
impressive arm triangle after pretty much almost getting knocked out in the first round, but
Mm.
Shane blew himself up, and then Brock took advantage of it and got a freaking arm triangle, which I was like, oh my god, check this guy out.
Check him out,
But
innit?
then whoever he fought, I think it was Overeem or somebody. He does
Overeem,
not like getting hit. Overeem
stomach.
destroyed him.
It was those
Yeah.
knees, yeah. And he's supposed to have had, and then they came out with, he had what, triculitis that's it.
Diverticulitis. Yeah, that did not feel good. I'm sure going to his midsection with some knees from Overeem, but you could just see in his other fights, he just did not like being punched. He would do that turn and kind of curl up. I mean, it's just
Yes.
not someone who's been fighting for a long time. But I mean, he's from a physics standpoint, he's so huge. Even give him a few tools,
Yeah.
and he obviously did what he did, which was pretty impressive.
100%. He made that mark. He made that mark within the
He absolutely did. You cannot take that away from him. The man
mm.
was a freaking UFC heavyweight champ.
And not to take anything away from CM Punk. I mean, it was a total reverse in regards to the results, but he tried, man.
Yeah, yeah, he did. But I mean, that was a freak show.
Yeah,
That was Dana trying to appease the crowd. That guy had no business
business,
in a
none,
UFC cage.
none.
Not against Darren Till, not against Mike Jackson, even though Mike Jackson struggled to to win that fight. But and even Pat actually cornered Mike Jackson for that fight. But yeah, CM Punk, that was more a testament to the Mike dude getting in there, but
Mm,
it definitely was not on merit. That was on name
yes,
and pay-per-view buys and shit like that, which is
100%.
what even Randy Couture fighting James Toney, it was a freak show. I didn't like seeing it was just what it was, but I'm like, nah, man, this is the UFC, dude. This is a meritocracy. You can't just be in here because you talk some shit and a lot of people know you, because that's a slippery slope into your almost WWE freaking backyard mud show, just nonsense.
And harkening back to the days of the UFC 1 and 2 and 3, I guess, when he had who was the guy who came in with just the one glove on?
Yeah, Al Jimmins, I think his name was. Yeah, that was it. That's, and again, you don't know what you don't know at the time, but it's like you look back on it
But
like, what the
think
hell?
about it. But think about it, right? This is no holds bar. You could actually punch in the
Yeah,
groin and all. You couldn't get out eye gouge, but boxing glove. You got a 10-ounce boxing glove. That's gonna
Just
give.
one too. Like that left hand is so powerful. I
What?
have to shield it a little bit, otherwise I'll
This
kill
is it.
someone.
Why shield it? Let's keep the flipping. Keep your wrist, strapped up nice and tight so it's
Yeah,
immobile. And then you've got a perfect hammer there. Forget the
yeah.
glove. You don't need a pillow on the end of it.
Who did he fight? He didn't even. I think it was maybe Shamrock or maybe it was Gracie or Shamrock, one of the two. They weren't even real. They were like step one of a 10-step move of choking him, and like step two, Al Jimmins start tapping. Like he didn't even want to smoke at all. He's like, I don't know what this dude's doing, but
And then
I
what's he
can't
doing?
move. I can't move. I'm freaking out. Tap, 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 tap. That was
Oh,
adorable.
he was the good old days, the good old days. We've come so,
Oh my
so
goodness.
far.
Or
Hey,
what was it? Ron Van Cleef, I think his name. He competed.
oh,
He's obviously older
Cleve,
now.
wasn't he the karate guy?
Yeah, yeah. If he was 51 when he competed, that he
Yeah.
got served up. But still, again, you just don't know what you don't know. Because I think
Mm,
back in the day, it was the UFC one, et cetera, was more like these are kind of tough man contests. Basically,
exactly.
it was kind of
Yes.
one dimensional again. People just kind of being one thing, if at all. Some people were just big strong men who fought in bars or whatever, and some of them did well. But I mean, it was obviously as it evolved, you saw as we see now, like we talked about the evolution of the sports. So beyond next level now, it's ridiculous.
Most definitely. As we wind this conversation down, Jeff, what are your thoughts on the most recent spate of no contests and illegal knees to downed opponents and stuff? Because there seems to be a lot. Well, I guess we'll say it's 50-50. You've got people calling the new champ Aljamain Sterling um, an actor, and he's a smart businessman.
The Oscar goes
Yeah,
to.
yeah. And then you've got on the other hand people saying, "Well, wait a minute, he got kneed in his fucking head, man. Like, what are we talking about? He didn't even see the knee go in." Um, I'm surely you're not the first person to be able to put yourself into somebody else's body to know what they're feeling. Like,
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, it's for me. So the eye poke thing that's been going on forever, and they need to address those gloves because a lot of those fighters, when they throw that jab out as a feeler,
yeah,
their fingers are extended. And John Jones is kind of notorious for that.
mm,
That happens a lot, and I don't think that's necessarily an intentional thing. But me personally, just watching Sterling. No, you're absolutely right, and that's what a lot of people are saying. Like, hey, you guys didn't catch that knee, so you don't know exactly how it felt. To me, just having watched the sport for years and having seen people catch, the cyborg guy who got his face crushed by
ooh,
Michael Venom
Santos.
Page.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it was like he didn't. But I mean, again, it might have been that period more severe. To me, it just seemed like he was laying it on a little thick. I'm sure it hurt. I cannot say it didn't hurt because I mean that guy he freaking squared up on him and boom.
mm,
And that's completely unacceptable for Yan as a champion to do something so undisciplined.
yeah.
I mean, whatever. If you want to discuss like whether fighters should lose their belts off disqualification, I mean, technically, yes, they should. But it was like when I saw Sterling just kind of laying it on a little thick, and I know he knows the rules of like, hey, if he gets disqualified at this, you got the belt. For me personally, I
But
would
wait a minute,
never ever.
Jeff. Wait a minute. Let me pause you on that point. I've spoken to a lot of, and I'm sure you have as well, fighters, and they don't know the full set. They probably know 30% of the rules.
Well, those are what those fight meetings are for. For me personally, I thought the rule was if one hand is on the ground, you can't knee him. And
Yes.
both of Sterling's head were behind his head. So I didn't. I'm not a judge, so I didn't get into necessarily the nuance of the judging. But in my opinion, I thought it was one hand was on the ground.
Yeah,
But
it
again, it
was.
was super undisciplined of Yan. And unfortunately, the rules are the rules. I don't know if Sterling milked it, but for me personally, just from an optics standpoint,
Hmm.
like I told him, like don't let Dana put that belt on you. Don't let him swing it around your waist.
Mm,
And he did, but immediately he took it off and dropped it. Like that's what I wanted to see him do. I
yeah.
did not want to see him stunt with the belt
Mm.
because even though he got it, he didn't win it like
No, he
legit
didn't earn
because
it. He didn't. No, he didn't earn it.
he wasn't winning the fight either. Almost like the Leon Edwards, like Leon was winning that fight and probably would have won.
Yes.
Yan was winning that fight against Sterling and probably would have won. Obviously, we don't know now, but it's
Do
just
you, would you have given do you, my score was Aljo got the first round clearly, even though he got dropped, but the pace and the significant strikes, etc. I think he definitely got round one. I think two Jan got, three
I honestly don't remember how specifically the
Yeah.
each round played out, but when I'm watching it, I'm like, Sterling just looked slow. Like I said,
He,
when I was calling the fights with Pat live on a certain channel, it looked like he was fighting in water. To me, it
mm,
just looked like he was slow. I didn't see him doing anything necessarily dominant, but it's hard to call fights and then talking to people or anything. But I mean, it was, to me, it looked like Yan had it pretty well handled.
mm,
But it is what it is as far as the knee. I think regardless of how Sterling played it, they were still going to disqualify him with slow mo. It's like he needed him when he was down illegally.
yeah.
Like
Hmm.
Sterling could have stood right up and been fine, but I think the fact that he just need him in and of itself is what would have cost him the title. But from an optic standpoint and a PR standpoint, you have people like, people are just like, hey man, he got the belt. It was an illegal knee. But from Sterling's standpoint, you just can't be going out to after parties with the belt on your shoulder and flossing like you're the champ,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're not. I mean,
Yeah.
technically you are, but it's for me personally. I could be completely talking on my. It's just a bad look.
Yes. I know.
Because I mean, almost he has to be like, man, I don't want to win it like that, dude. I know
Mm,
I realize the rules say I'm the champion now, but that's not how I want to win. And that's not how I'm going to build my legacy off. You know what I mean? And that
yeah.
just makes for better PR. People are like, yeah, that's how you do it, champ. That's how you don't do it like you knocked him out in 5 seconds or something.
Mm. Did you listen to his podcast after the weekly scraps where he
I
explained?
didn't. I
Okay.
didn't.
Well, he because obviously he's been mocked and attacked on social media
Oh,
and
for sure.
on I think well, most of the MMA podcasts and YouTubers, they're not being as nice as you would think, especially being ex-fighters and judges and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, he's basically come out and said, yes, there is footage of me with the belt on, smiling with people. That's because I was at wherever they stay, he's the residents after the fights, and his friends and family, who loads of them came to the event to support him, wanted to celebrate and wanted to take photographs with him and the belt. So
Yeah.
he obliged, and then
I get
after
that.
he separated himself and said, okay, you've had your pictures now. Like, I just want to chill kind of thing. Let's just celebrate, us being here together kind of thing. It
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily him. And apparently, I haven't checked, but it's not on his social media. This is on other people's social media. Um, so that would explain that. And you're 100% correct. He didn't, as a fighter, and he even said himself, I don't feel like a champion because I didn't win it properly.
Well,
But
and good
then,
for him.
yes, but it's just that I get a bad taste in my mouth, as I say, when people aren't, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But when people are just being like hella harsh and just like, yo, my guy's an actor, you know what I mean? What
Yeah,
was he
yeah. Well, I mean,
doing?
I mean, come on, man. In the world of 2021 social media, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
There's no pleasing everybody, but it was. I don't know the numbers on how many people have lost their title from a disqualification like that,
none,
but because it's
none.
so yeah, I didn't think so, and it's so unprecedented. So I could, like we were talking about earlier, these fighters, coaches, camps, they fight their asses off to get a shot at the title,
Hmm.
and sometimes they don't even get it, even though they deserve it. So to see somebody win it and then floss it in such kind of dubious circumstances, I could see why he could get a lot of ire from
Mm,
the MMA community. I mean, I get that, but again, he got hit with an illegal knee, and the rules are the rules.
totally, totally. Do you think now this raises another question? What, because it was, even with everything that's happened, with the three events that's happened, Aljamain Sterling, Darren Stewart, and I can't remember who he was fighting again.
Edwards, Leon Edwards,
No, no,
or the
no. His opponent, but yeah, Andy Leon and Edwards thing. Everything, all of those events were handled totally differently. Why isn't there? And obviously, I know it's different events, it's different fighters, it's slightly different circumstances, even though two were illegal knees while on the ground,
mm,
and it's different judges. Why isn't there like a standard thing, which everyone would know,
yeah,
okay, this guy's been kneed in his head, regardless of what's happened, he's disqualified, the other person's won, or it's a no contest.
yeah, there should be a universal standard. There shouldn't be any kind of ambiguity in that, because if there is, then like if something happens again down the line similar where they don't lose their belt, then Yan's like, whoa, I lost my belt for an illegal knee. Why isn't he? So yeah, I mean, I think it's very important that they have a universal standard and not, you know, obviously circumstances dictate. But if you're talking about an illegal knee, you're talking about an illegal knee, and the
Mm.
result should be the same.
Illegal is illegal is illegal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, especially again when you're going to take one guy's title from it, and then you're just, well, this circumstance was a little bit different, even though it was a knee. I don't think it deserves a full disqualification. It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
See
How do
what I
we
did?
part and parcel that?
I just know because what I did, Jeff, is I just lifted my knee up slightly. I gave him like
I
30%, I didn't give him the whole 100.
was trying to pick him back up with my knee.
Exactly, exactly. Jeff, again, have had a wonderful conversation. Plug all the social medias and promote this up and coming event as well. Again,
Yeah, cagedaggression.tv, man. We are obviously all over the world, March 25th, 26th, 27th. It's going to be amazing. We have like 3 nights of just jam-packed stack cards. Like I said, Saturday night, Pat Miletich will be calling it. Friday night, Jens Pulver will be calling it with me. And then Saturday, it'll be me and Jordan Henman. But I mean, I'm so looking forward to it. We've been putting so much work into this. So yeah, please, if you guys aren't doing anything around the world, I know you're over there in the UK.
hmm
If you want to check us out, now main
yeah.
cagedaggression.tv. And me personally, Twitter, I'm Jeffrey Wilson. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram at jmichaelwill. Just trying to do my thing, man. And I can't thank you enough, man. I appreciate you reaching out to me every once in a while, seeing how I'm doing, and get me back on the show. Even though we're different, little bit of a different subject matter this time. That's all right. We
Yes,
got a bunch of the MMA stuff going on, so definitely
exactly.
wanted to talk about that. And I appreciate you, my man.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Time wise, what time is it starting? The pay-per-view.
I think 6:30 or 7:30 Central Standard Time
Okay.
each night, March 25th, 26th, 27th. I don't know exactly what time. You guys are about 6 or 7 hours ahead, so it would
Yeah,
be a little bit late. But
about
I'm
11,
telling
12.
you,
But look, Mike, I mean, Jeff, this is nothing because we have to stop up until 3 a.m. to watch the main events for UFC. So, an early start at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, that's even better.
well, and not to throw it out there, but whatever, just keeping it 100. That Saturday, the 25th, 26th, the 27th will be the rematch between Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic. So I know you might have another option for Saturday night, but you can actually do both if you want to. But obviously, Saturday night, we'd love to see you over at cageaggression.tv. But we are up against a little competition Saturday night, but Thursday and Friday, again, cageaggression.tv. You will not be disappointed.
Definitely. And I'll make sure I put the links below in the description. Make sure you
Please
go over
do.
and check it out. You will not be disappointed in regards to the level of talent and the production quality as well. So as I
Absolutely.
say, go and follow over onto the social medias as well and tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe and share.
Without a doubt. Thank you so much, brother.